2021 USEA Supply Forum. As a brief introduction to the Alliance to Save Energy, the Alliance is a bipartisan, nonprofit organization focused primarily on the issues of energy efficiency policy. We work with a bipartisan honorary board led by Alliance Honorary Chair Senator Jeanne Shaheen, with Vice Chairs Senators Rob Portman and Chris Coons. Other honorary board members include Senator Collins, Markey, Murkowski, Warner, and Wyden, in addition to Representatives Burgess, Kelly, Kinzinger, McKinley, Rush, Tonko, and Welch. I'm joined by Kande Ukela, former CEO of Sustainable Energy for All. The Alliance's operating board of directors is led by our chair, Chris Womack, and we are fortunate to be led by Alliance President Paula Glover. In total, the Alliance is led by some 32 board members representing energy, environment, business, and energy efficiency. Corporate affiliation and representation includes companies such as 3M, Ameresco, Johnson Controls, Siemens, Trane Technologies, North American Insulation Manufacturers Association, DuPont, Google, Edison Electric Institute, California Energy Commission, and many others. While my remarks today will focus primarily on energy efficiency and the role, really, of energy efficiency in domestic climate policy, I want to begin with a bit of proposed level setting. The nation, and indeed the world, are on track for a significant energy transformation, the impetus of which is climate change. In its most simple of characterizations, and in light of current policy trends, for power generation, the proposition is for greater reliance on low to zero emission fuel resources, primarily resulting from renewables, nuclear, carbon capture, and other technologies. For transportation, the proposition is for greater reliance on light and heavy duty vehicles dependent on alternative fuel resources, really with a significant expectation that electric vehicles will dominate the landscape. For the built environment, the proposed transformation necessarily includes fuel switching practices as proposed, and to some degree, similar solutions are anticipated as we consider commercial, industrial, and agricultural responses. So presuming this is the direction in which policy is going, what does this mean? In 2020, which was an exceptional year, U.S. electricity consumption equaled 3.8 trillion kilowatt hours. Between 1950 and 2020, the U.S. recorded an increase in electricity demand in 59 of the 70 years, with the highest consumption in 2018, when energy consumption equaled 4 trillion kilowatt hours. And that pretty much resulted from the colder winter that year, and in that same year, the warmer summer. What makes 2020 exceptional, of course, is the COVID pandemic, which resulted in lower electricity use in the commercial and industrial sectors. For a comparative look, 2020 really represented a 4% consumption reduction from 2019. That said, in 2020, the electric power sector accounted for about 32% of all U.S. carbon emissions, of which coal equaled about 54%, natural gas 44%, and petroleum 1%. 2019 is likely the better analysis, where according to the EPA, electricity generation accounted for 25% of all U.S. GHG emissions. Transportation accounted for 29%, with industry, I should say, agriculture, commercial, and residential equaling the remaining parts at 23%, 10%, 7%, and 6% respectively. At issue is whether the U.S. can effectively meet climate demands and energy demands simultaneously. Every indication suggests that we will use more electricity in the future and not less, requiring significantly more power generation. This is supported by policy trends leaning heavily toward electrification, including transportation electrification. In fact, by some estimates, the US will require 90% more electricity in 2050 than in 2018. And a separate Princeton study suggests that the transmission grid will need to expand by 60% by 2030 to effectively utilize renewable fuel resources, while also handling greater loads from electric vehicles and other products and equipment. Now as we consider that existing electricity generation demand of 4 trillion kilowatt hours, some 40% comes from natural gas, 20% from nuclear, 20% from renewables, 19% from coal, and 1% from petroleum. Presuming the Biden administration's goal of a 100% clean electricity sector by 2035 were attainable, and arguably necessary to achieve emission reduction targets to address climate change, we're only about 40% there. Arguably, connecting renewables through transmission will be a challenge in 14 years as we consider costs, logistics, legal challenges, and other obstacles. And I would simply identify the New England Clean Energy Connect really as a reference for the challenges that may be ahead. Add to this proposed moves toward greater electrification, including electric vehicles, and the transition becomes even more challenging. Moreover, consider the relatively nascent posture of carbon capture. Though extremely promising, really, in its ability to remove emissions from power generation, carbon capture is still relatively young in its maturation, notwithstanding the recent $45 million Department of Energy investment earlier this month. And explicit in this discussion are the issues of electricity reliability, energy independence, resiliency, security, and of course, affordability, particularly as generation capacity and demand could be set for some misalignment. Gross domestic product for 2019 was approximately $21.4 trillion, powered significantly from the nation's current energy portfolio. Certainly, if we are thinking beyond status quo in terms of energy productivity in the forward years, while at the same time reducing carbon emissions, we're required to conduct a real examination of the nation's energy resources and our ability to meet demand while also effectively addressing climate change. To avoid the misalignment between capacity, demand, and climate change, we would propose that energy efficiency will need to lead the policy discussion. Absent any generation portfolio changes at all, energy efficiency can get us partway there. However, we all anticipate changes in the portfolio. Without being able to predict how quickly and through which tools decarbonization occurs, be it carbon capture, nuclear, renewables, or others, the nation will still be required to meet electricity demand, including under a scenario where we will require substantially more electricity than what we are using today. Energy efficiency is the bridge resource as the nation attempts to substantially reduce emissions, and energy efficiency will be the sustaining resource to ensure energy productivity, reliability, and affordability once that transition occurs. Energy efficiency alone has the ability to reduce emissions by 50% by 2050 and can achieve 40% of the carbon reduction goals of the Paris Agreement. So what does this look like? Energy efficiency at the center of domestic climate policy. What are the policies? We're talking about robust energy efficiency solutions in all major sectors where carbon emissions are produced. In the residential and commercial building sector, because buildings represent 70% of US electricity use and subsequently 13% of all US GHG emissions, establishing solutions to reduce energy intensity in the built environment is of particular significance. As to the commercial building environment, there are significant technical and market barriers before we can attain higher levels of commercial building efficiency. For example, grid interactive efficient buildings could achieve 100 billion to 200 billion in electric power system savings over the next 20 years and avoid 80 million tons of CO2 emissions per year by 2030. These are buildings that use distributed energy resources, that actively use smart technologies to optimize energy use and grid services. That said, there are some highly simplified solutions in the commercial space available today. Just as simple examples, as federal funds are made available to build schools, hospitals, agency offices and other facilities, and affordable housing, quite frankly, those funds could be specifically tied and contingent upon utilization or application of the highest efficiency standards, locking in over a decade of energy efficiency and carbon reductions. As we think about the residential environment, the objectives are similar, but depending on the types of buildings, the energy efficiency measures employed may differ some. For example, as we think about the single-family built environment, significant attention will be given to the building envelope, insulation, air sealing, windows, doors, and roofing, and ensuring that each of these components are functioning at the highest levels of efficiency. Additionally, as we consider the single-family environment, energy efficiency is focused on the equipment and products that power the home. This is lighting, heating, cooling equipment, household appliances, and electrical devices used in the home, and ensuring that the products and equipment are operating at optimal efficiency levels. This is a process that includes regulatory bodies and agencies establishing energy efficiency performance metrics, research and development at the manufacturing level to develop performance, and then incentives on the customer end user side to incentivize and drive high efficiency adoption. This can come in the form of tax incentives, such as Section 25C of the Internal Revenue Code, in addition to rebates and other direct pay and support, particularly for those for whom affordability, building retrofitting, or purchasing of high efficiency equipment, appliances, and products is unattainable. Short pause, because here it's important to distinguish the single family from the multifamily, particularly as we think about the necessary energy efficiency policy solutions and affordability issues. It's often easy to assume that as we think about low-income consumers, we are not thinking or talking about single-family homeowners. However, the Alliance has learned from its own research, relying on data from the American Community Survey and the Residential Energy Consumption Survey, that the total number of single-family homeowners where affordability and income are in conflict is really quite large. For example, for annual incomes below $60,000, the data shows some 35 million owner-occupied units. At 60,000 and above, the number is 39 million. The data help us understand what will be required in terms of incentives and assistance to ensure energy efficiency affordability, particularly considering that the median age of owner-occupied units is 39 years. That said, energy efficiency incentives and solutions will be needed, but will operate differently in the affordability and rental context as well, and will require policy responses that drive and incentivize property owners or landlords to retrofit buildings and install high efficiency equipment and products where renters live. As we look at transportation and needed energy efficiency policies, we know that transportation equals about 29% of all GHG emissions. The types of policy solutions needed to allow energy efficiency as the indispensable resource to both reduce carbon emissions and balance capacity and demand include strong fuel efficiency standards, growth in alternative and efficient fuel resources to power light, medium, and heavy vehicles, deployment and utilization of high efficiency airplane engines, And as we consider ships and other water vessels, energy efficiency solutions include ship design improvements, alternative fuels, and improvements in vessel operations as well. Energy efficiency policies will also be required to further substantive carbon reductions in industry and manufacturing, which equals 23% of all total GHG emissions. When talking about energy efficiency in the industry and manufacturing context, we are targeting the equipment used, operations and process, and the application of smart manufacturing technologies. The end game is to optimize manufacturing and industry systems in a way that achieves the highest efficiency outcomes. In the application, this means deployment and utilization of multiple solutions, including but not limited to distributed energy resources, carbon capture, electrification, low emission fuel technologies, and storage. And finally, as we consider agriculture, which equals about 10% of GHG emissions, there exists meaningful solutions through energy efficiency to positively impact the energy transition and get us to 50% carbon reductions. Energy efficiency in agriculture has the ability to achieve over $1 billion in energy savings. In practice, this means the application of multiple energy efficiency measures, including but not limited to retrofitting farm facilities, water systems and equipment, and the attached policy incentives to support development and use by the nation's farmers. In the spirit of repetition, energy efficiency alone has the ability to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2050. And through energy efficiency, we have the ability to meet 40% of the emission goals of the Paris Agreement. This means the application, deployment, and investment of energy efficiency technologies across all aspects of the U.S. economy: transportation, the built environment, industry, agriculture, and of course, power generation. However, to ensure that power generation meets and exceeds energy productivity needs to power our economy while simultaneously reducing carbon emissions, energy efficiency is indispensable and is the sole resource that will allow us to reduce energy intensity without reducing productivity. However, the application and access to relevant technologies and solutions must be universal, and relevant policy solutions will need to support and incentivize adoption at all income levels throughout all regions of the country. If we fail to retrofit homes owned by moderate and low-income homeowners or apartments where low and moderate income families live, then these parts of the country will continue to produce high emissions. Moreover, in the context of a power generation system that requires less energy intensity due to fuel resource variability, these areas may also suffer as we consider electricity reliability. Consequently, where electricity is unreliable, then economic growth and development will also be absent. Similar results will be realized as we consider rural connectivity and access, particularly as we consider the role of broadband technology will play in the application of energy efficiency technologies. And these concerns go beyond the residential environment and will also directly impact small business development, transportation, agriculture and farming, and manufacturing, where income or location may be an impediment to energy efficiency access. So what does all this mean economically? In addition to the ability of accelerated energy efficiency to meet our carbon emission targets and effectively balance demand and capacity, energy efficiency is also an economic engine. Energy efficiency is one of the largest employers in the energy industry and employs more than 10 million people, covering 99.8% of all U.S. counties. Energy efficiency employs more than 10 times those employed in coal and 7 times the wind and solar workforces combined. These are jobs with a unionization rate nearly double the national average, with pay that averages 28% more than the national median, approximately $24.44 an hour. The payoff for our nation, consumers, industry, and the economy are enormous. A reliable, resilient, and affordable energy system equaling over 700 billion in energy savings, while substantively contributing to at least 50% of the nation's needed carbon reductions. Thank you for the opportunity to provide remarks today as part of the USEA Supply Forum, and I look forward to your questions.
Yes, thank you so very much, Vincent. Very, very interesting. And Vincent, are you able to take what we're doing in the United States and take it further internationally so that that there is a flow-through effect to a broader world? That is, can we lead the way in this, or has that already been done by the European countries and others, the Scandinavian countries that are a little bit that got into this earlier?
I'll answer the question in two ways. One, the short answer is yes. We are able to lead here and also help lead in other places around the world. But I would also think about this in the context of underdeveloped nations where the energy systems aren't yet fully developed, and the need to apply energy efficiency solutions as the grid and operational aspects of that grid are developed, and therefore not have to deploy energy efficiency solutions as an afterthought, but while the grid is actually being built.
Thank you so much, Vincent, and for your time. And apologies for the self-immolation of my computer earlier, but it's a delight to have you on, and we really appreciate your contribution. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate the opportunity.